Welcome to the Book Club Life. So here we are in November, and I am so excited that I get to bring you guys somebody you've seen before, Colleen Coble, and somebody new to me that I really discovered I like his writing. And you're actually the first guy on our show, Rick Acker. So thank you guys so much for coming on the show.
Thanks
it's November,
us,
so
Jenny.
People are thinking about what they want to get their spouse for Christmas or themselves to their own Christmas present. And I thought y'all's book, What We Hide, was amazing. So for anybody who doesn't know you yet, would you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about the book, What We Hide?
Sure. I'm Colleen Coble. I write romantic mysteries, and I'd always thought that it would be fun to do a legal thriller or legal suspense, but I knew I didn't have the chops for it. I didn't know enough about legal stuff. And Rick has been a friend a long time and is also on the ACFW board.
Okay.
But we really got connected because we were playing Pokemon Go together, and I saw a different side of him.
Who knows that games can bring you together even more.
And so I pitched the idea to him of writing together, and he prayed about it too, just like I had, and agreed to do it. And we are having so much fun. And What We Hide is set in the Gulf Shores area, and so it has some of the Pelican Harbor characters in it.
Okay.
So readers, I think, are going
I
to like
thought I recognized
that.
some people,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
in some places even maybe.
So Savannah is working at the university, and Tupelo Grove University, that her family is very influential in, and she and Hez have been separated for a couple of years. They lost a small child in a tragic accident, and he self-imploded with drinking,
Right.
and so they separated, and everything seems to be going her way and doing all right. She thinks she's on the road to a new life, and Hez shows up asking for a second chance. And so there's smuggling of artifacts. You want to talk about it a little bit too, Rick?
Sure, yes. She discovers, she's a history professor, she discovers that the history department is being used to launder looted artifacts, and the treasure may be being stolen from the university collection, and it's bad stuff. And then she wants to talk to the university president about it, and when she goes in to do that, she finds him dead. And she happens to be the number one suspect, so of course, she has to turn to the best lawyer she knows, her soon-to-be ex-husband, Hez, and has to ask him to come down and represent her. And they together, they try to unravel what's going on at Tupelo Grove University before it gets to them first.
Mm-hmm.
So I just finished it, about a month ago, but recently in my mind, and it was so good. And it was the same as every Colleen Coble book that I've read, as far as I think of your books like candy and potato chips, because I love them and I always want them. So it's just like a comfortable, I know I'm in for a really good mystery and a really good love story. And I enjoyed the legal aspects that you brought in. And my brother is actually a lawyer, so that brought me back in my mind to seeing him in the courtroom. And I'm going to ask you a little bit about that in a minute. But so just such a pleasure to have you guys on. So we'll jump right into the interview questions.
Okay.
So if your book club chooses this for your book, you're welcome to use the questions. And okay, so the name of the book is What We Hide. And some of the characters have some things they're hiding.
They sure do. And more will be coming out over in the next two books.
Yes, and you find out some major things at the end of this book. So there is a book too.
Yep.
So what is something about yourself or selves that you used to hide but you don't anymore?
Well, I used to hide the fact that I had some childhood trauma growing up, and now I do talk about it a little more. So,
Okay.
and I think that is one of the things that has helped me in writing, and that we all have things, you know, they're all things that impact us. And when we finally kind of come to grips with it, we have to start talking about those things a little bit, or we never come to grips with it. And you know, we can't get them uncovered and let God deal with those. So how about you, Rick?
Well, I used to hide the Pokemon Go thing, but that's kind of out now.
Okay.
That is totally out,
Rick. But for me, it was more, you know, as a lawyer, you always have to be on, you always have to be confident, you always have to be right. And learning to go into a new situation and be able to say, I don't know. And be humble in that situation and be openly humble and openly asking for help is something that has grown in me, and we see some of that development in Hez, the hero in this book.
Yes, yes. Okay, oh, those are really good. I didn't know that about you, so thank you for sharing, and that's really interesting. And I think maybe, at least I do, all of us feel a little bit more like lawyers now in today's society with cancel culture and that you have to be very careful what you say and who you share anything with, because they might just cancel you because of who you voted for, or because whether you took a vaccine or not, or because you don't like the show they like and you're out of my life now, or just the silliest things.
Yep.
So that's really interesting. Okay, so when we open the book, we find that Savannah and Hez are on the brink of divorce, like you said, because of a tragedy in their past, and that he dealt with that with alcohol. So have you and your spouse ever gone through a tragedy or a separation, and what brought you back together? What got you through? And do you have any advice for someone who's having a hard time in their marriage?
I've been married 53 years this year, next month. And we've never been on the brink of divorce or anything like that. But any marriage, has ups and downs and issues. And probably the hardest part was when Dave was, we'd only been married a few years, but he was going to college full time, and we had 2 small children at home, and he was working full time. And so, working through those, whose responsibility was this or that, and the biggest thing is you just have to talk it out. You just have to keep the lines of communication open, or no marriage survives. If you close up and you don't talk about how you're feeling, because I often felt kind of on my own, because our children were quite small, and that was kind of a hard time. But he was having a hard time too, because he didn't get to be part of some of their smaller smaller years, because he was working so hard, both on school and in his job. So
that's good.
Yeah, I've also been married for a while, and we've never been on the verge of divorce, but we did have a crisis early in our marriage. We were both in law school. My wife had just finished her exams, and our then 5-month-old daughter started having seizures.
Oh my goodness.
And they wouldn't stop, and the doctors couldn't do anything. And it went on for months, and we're getting progressively worse and worse news. And it was in some ways kind of like what happens in the book, that I felt this helplessness.
Right.
We both did. This baby who is looking to you for everything, and she's convulsing, and she's going through these crises, and you can't do anything. And it could have torn us apart, like happened in the Tupelo Grove series. We were fortunate and blessed enough to be able to turn to God and find peace there. And that really would be my advice, is that when you find that you are out of control, recognize God is still in control, and learn to find peace in Him and just turn to Him. It's the hardest thing to do in that moment, but it's ultimately the right and the best thing to do.
Okay. And so can we ask, how is your daughter doing?
She's her seizures stabilized. They finally stabilized the seizures. She has some fairly significant brain damage and brain malformation. So she's a disabled adult now. She's 32.
Okay. She's survived and is stable.
Great young woman. Colleen's met her. She went on a research trip.
She's beautiful.
All right, wonderful. Good. I'm glad to hear that. I know we're all just wondering how she's doing. My son had a seizure once, and it was the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. We were just driving to the ER as fast as possible, just holding him up, because, oh my gosh. So
our little grandson had one several Christmases ago in Indiana, and his was an absent seizure. And we were talking to him, and he was just staring, and we couldn't get his attention. And we went tearing to the ER like that, and he never had another, but yeah, scary.
So prayer for our kids and prayer for our relationships. That's good. Okay, Colleen, so many beignets and coffees. I always eat really good when I'm reading a Colleen Coble book. But I want to know, how do you stay healthy, and how do you try to just do the best you can with your body and your physical health, because it's probably not beignets and coffee.
It's not. It's coffee, but it's not beignets. I have to eat gluten-free, so there's no beignets for me. Unfortunately, I would love to have some beignets. I've had them in the past, but yeah, I'm kind of a health food nut, actually.
Okay.
It's I'm always reading stuff about health and autoimmune disease and this or that, and checking out my grandkids and trying to stay on top of all that. But the last few years have been rough, though, because in the last 4 years I've had 2 broken ankles with surgery and a knee replacement, and so the mobility issues have been tough. And so now that we're in Arizona, we moved 2 months ago, I'm going to try to do better about walking and just that the exercise piece, but which has been very difficult here lately. So
all right, so gluten-free and staying active is your
and being up on
and
what's
researching.
Going. Researching. I'm always talking on Facebook about natural health stuff. It's just kind of my thing.
One thing I love about this book, and I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to give anything away, but I learned a little bit of a safety tip of maybe something not to do that you wouldn't think just with technology. So maybe y'all can think of exactly what I'm talking about, but if not, I'll tell you after. So Rick, I have a question for you. Actually, do you want to tell us what you do to stay healthy?
He walks out with Pokemon Go.
Well, no, actually, this is actually true. It is actually a good way to get, if you're having trouble getting steps in, it is one of the rare computer games that actually encourages you to be outside, walking, be social, be with other people. So but I also do try to, work out every day, and it's tough to squeeze it in.
Yes.
But it's something that I went from, law school to big law firm where you're working 70 hours a week to some fairly high pressure cases at the AG's office. So I've realized that if you don't do that, you're going to pay the price in the long run. So it's something that I try to do.
Yeah, I had some back issues, and my husband plays basketball, and so he's very active. And so I'm also trying to work out 5 days a week.
Good for you, Jenny.
Sometimes it goes out the window if you're preparing for a big trip, but just the day-to-day,
like
I try. Yes. I wasn't working out the days before this. But, okay. So Rick, the legal parts and the courtroom scenes were really interesting, especially since I've seen my brother, and I was like, wow, he's good. And he is good. And I can tell you're good too, obviously, working with the AG. So why did you become a lawyer? And then how has that influenced your writing? And then also, how did you get the bug to write? And tell me a little bit about your publishing journey.
Sure. Well, when I was in college, I knew the one thing I did not want to do was be a lawyer. My dad was a lawyer.
Okay.
And I had gone into the office with him, talked to him about his work, and I detested it. It was the most boring, painful thing I could think of. And then but I loved debate. I loved writing. I loved the intellectual back and forth. And I got as I was a political science major, and then got into my senior year and had to take constitutional law. I'm like, oh wow, this stuff is fun. My dad had been spending all his time in the tax code and stuff like that, and which I still.
Boring.
Oh yeah, it is boring. But the litigating, the arguing back and forth, and especially against people where you're following, everybody's following rules, so you're relying on legitimate evidence and legitimate, authorities and things like that, is just fascinating and great fun.
Yeah.
And now, because I'm in the Attorney General's office, one thing a lot of people don't know is if you're in a big firm, the cases pick you, right? It's, the big bank has gotten a subpoena from the Department of Justice, or they've gotten sued, and they come to you to defend. So the case picks you.
Okay.
For me, I get to pick the cases. So if I see a case where I think justice can be done and I think I can help, I get to go do that.
Yeah.
And it's such a wonderful, refreshing feeling.
Such a neat way to make a difference that's tangible that you can see right then and there.
Yeah. And that's also kind of how I got in my writing journey too.
Okay.
That I loved to tell interesting, persuasive stories that would hold the reader's interest, whether it's, a judge, right, or a jury, or readers. And so there's a lot of overlap in the skill set being a lawyer and being a storyteller, novelist.
Yeah.
And so that my first book actually wound up. How I got published is there was a weird situation where I was switching jobs, but the firm wanted me to stick around for a few months to help with some stuff, but they weren't going to be giving, but I was kind of like walled off on everything else because they knew I was leaving. So I had large blocks of time every day where I just cranked out that first novel that had been on my heart ever since.
Okay.
And got it published.
Okay. And are you one of those people? I feel like I heard some story of somebody who writes on the train. Was that you? Okay.
That's it.
Yep.
Okay. Because I listened to the ACFW podcast. There was y'all had a season when I was like listening to every single one. I thought that was a good use
One
of
thing
good use of
he
time.
won't mention probably because he's too modest is he's crazy smart, and the things that get stuck in his head, the little tidbits of knowledge. I mean, he knows something about just about everything. I'll bring up something. Oh, I ran into this, and he'll say, oh yeah, and da 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 da. He'll add to all way more than I even picked up. He's just super smart.
That's awesome. So Colleen shared her story of getting published on our last episode, so I'm going to link that. If you missed it, you need to see it. It's so inspiring, so neat, and also how she met her husband is hilarious and super cute, and that's in there too. Okay, so for our next question, this is from a quote in the book. So what if she was afraid? That didn't dictate how she should behave now. So our main character comes to a point where, yeah, her life is in danger. She is afraid, but she comes to a point where she's like, you know what? I'm moving on anyway. I've got to do this. Mm-hmm. So what is a fear that you have faced and overcome? How did you conquer it? And what is your advice for someone who's facing the same thing?
Probably my superficial fear. I'm terrified of spiders, and I've never overcome that. Probably never will. but the fear that I probably deal with the most is loss of those that I love. Mm-hmm. And that first started when I lost my grandmother. I was 37, and then a year later I lost my brother in a freak lightning accident, which we talked about in that last podcast. But this is a fear that I have to deal with and keep it because it keeps popping up. It's that loss of control, I think, and that you can't do anything. And my daughter,
that you care about.
Yeah, my daughter nearly died of sepsis during COVID shutdown 2020, and they wouldn't let me in the hospital with her. But I prayed literally all night long for 2 weeks. I really don't believe I slept. If I did, I don't know when, because I just was in constant prayer. And that really opened my eyes to how deep down, I might have these fears on top, but deep down, I know who is in control and has the power to protect my children eternally. And that's the most important thing, is that they know Jesus, and they're protected eternally. So
that's really good. Rick, what about you?
I'm scared to death of male pattern baldness.
So is my brother. Although not the same level, so
That's right.
You're good, brother.
I've learned acceptance too. Yeah. No, but for me, it really is the same thing. I mean, it dealt with it in very dramatic fashion with our daughter. This infant, your children, those close to you, you realize that they are in God's hands, not yours, and.
Right.
The fear is that God may not have the same plans for them that you do,
right?
But learning to accept that God's plans are better than yours, and that God loves them more than you do.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So whatever comes, those truths, and you can do your best to rest in His peace, even though it can be very, very hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be a daily thing, or even an hourly thing when you're in your time of need.
And it erects all the time. Dave had prostate cancer, my husband, 13 years ago, and it was dormant, or it was in remission for 10 years, and suddenly came back 3 years ago. He had radiation, and we just found out just before conference that it's back. And so he's had all the radiation he can have. They'll say chemo will help, but if you read those studies, it's not
Right.
going to help much. So I'm researching my natural
Right.
stuff, trying to see if there's something that's going to help. And we're going to, we're trying some other things and working on it. But ultimately, I know God has him. And
Right.
if the worst happens, I'll see him again.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's hard to, it's still hard to walk through it. But,
Right.
And
that is the comfort we have as believers, in knowing that we and our loved ones love the Lord and that we get to live eternally with him. Otherwise, life would be very sad if this was it, just let's do this and be done.
And that's one of the things that, when you're talking to people who aren't Christians and you're trying to share your faith, I think what they don't a lot of times come to understand for a while is that it's not about the pie in the sky in heaven.
Right.
It's about the peace he gives us now as we walk through those trials.
Yes, and it's not about trying to be good, because none of us can be good enough, even though we want to be good because we want to please him, because we love him and we're so grateful. But it really is about our forever relationship with him.
Right.
That we have him and he loves us and he's got us in his hands.
Absolutely.
Another thing I would add to that is that y'all kind of mentioned is prayer. Just, it's amazing how much things can change with prayer, and that you can pray for wisdom and God just leads you every step of the way, and you don't always know what the end destination is, but God just time and time again will bring answers to prayer at just the right time.
Absolutely.
And so that's really good. Well, so everybody be praying for Colleen's husband, and I will be praying too.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next question. This is another quote from the book. This is two characters are having a conversation, and I'll just go ahead and say it. Rebuilding things won't be easy. We've been apart so long, and we're different people than we used to be. Grief has changed and reshaped us. And then another character says, life usually does, but we grow and adapt together. So how do you and your spouse, in the busyness of life, make sure that you are growing together instead of growing apart? And these are a lot of relationship questions. That is one of the big themes of the book, is just, are they going to get back together, or are they going to go ahead and finalize that divorce? So how do you make sure you and your spouse are growing together instead of apart?
Well, we have God at the center, number one, and so we can share our fears and our all of our trials together, and talk it through, and we just grow in those places where I'm weak, Dave is strong. When Dave is strong, I am weak, and we can balance each other out and hold hands and walk through that fire, so to speak. Like I said, I mentioned Dave's cancer, and at the same time, we had just gotten to conference, and I found out my dad was in heart failure and AFib, that's AFib, and I'm the oldest, so immediately I felt responsible. I needed to take care of things, and here I was here.
Right.
But God worked it out, and Dave was keeping me calm all through that, because that's what he does. I go, oh no, and Dave says, God's got this, and he does, and I know that. But my first reaction, of course, is to elevate a little. And then my youngest brother flew from Phoenix to Indiana, and he's there taking care of things, and God worked that all out. So
wonderful.
Yeah, I'd echo that for my wife and I. It's God is the third partner in our marriage, and we both talk to Him and we talk to each other, which is probably the other big thing, is being in communication, which is one thing candidly our characters sometimes have difficulty with.
Right.
But it is hard. It is hard to have difficult conversations with your spouse, but it's so necessary. And that's one thing that we make a real effort to do. And we're also just best friends. I mean, a lot of people talk about when they become empty nesters, which we kind of are, like as of like 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
How they don't know what to do with each other. Like they don't know each other, and we do know each other, and that's because we've been communicating and consciously doing things together all along. We're still best friends.
So don't let the kids take over.
That's right.
Exactly.
You were friends and fell in love first, so keep that. So
Yes.
keep God first, keep having fun together, communicating together.
absolutely.
Excellent
Okay.
summary.
Okay, very good. Okay, so we're about to switch to our Just for Fun, and actually, do y'all want to play a giveaway game with me?
Sure.
Okay. What we hide. I'm going to hide a quarter in one of my hands. And if you pick the hand with the quarter, I'll do a giveaway. Okay? So, which hand is hiding a quarter? Pick a hand. Just touch a hand. Oh my gosh! Okay, I'm going to give away one of their books. So check the link. I was actually going to give one away either way. But so check the link, and for how to enter, that will be on there. And you can also go to jennysnow.net/whatwehide to find the giveaway there. And so let's move on to our Just for Fun questions. Do you read each other's novels outside of this one? And yes or no. And then also, what is one quality that you respect and appreciate about each other?
Absolutely, and I've endorsed many of his books.
Okay.
So you know, that was one of the reasons I wanted to write with him. I knew our voices were similar too, so that we would mesh well. And one of the many things that I appreciate about Rick is that he's so even-tempered and never really gets riled. I mean, you know, he's very thoughtful. You know, he thinks things through and always has great advice. I know I'm giving you more than one, but I mean, they all tie together.
Okay.
You know, so
All
that's
right.
just Rick. That's just Rick.
And I've read her book too, of course, and that is, and she's right. One of the reasons why we decided that this would work and why it has worked so well, at least as far as we're concerned, is that we have very similar styles, and so readers really do have difficulty telling us apart. And one of the things that I value most about her is she is one of the most loving, caring people I have ever met.
I can agree with that. She's so nice. One time, I'm going to tell a little story. One time at one of the first reader events that I went to go do my podcast, and it might have been the first one, but it might have been the second one, but I was a little nervous about how I was going to be received and if I would be looked at as you're in the way, or yeah, come right in. Well, Colleen walked in the room, and I had interviewed her before, but you know, she's Colleen Coble, so she may not remember me. And she goes, Jenny! And came and gave me a big hug, and that just took all the nervousness away, and I just had the most fabulous day. And
I'm so glad.
I love
you
how
had a great day.
how loving you are as well. Okay, so Rick, how did you meet your wife, and what made you fall in love
I
with
love
her?
this story. I'm glad you asked him.
We met over a dead fish.
Okay.
What happened was I was a junior in college. I was knocking out the requirements I hadn't got to, so I needed to take a science class. I needed to take biology. And so I had to go to lab. I grabbed the seat closest to the door, turned to my left and saw this really cute chick.
Okay.
She's beautiful. She's beautiful blonde.
Oh, and I
She's
was
gorgeous.
convinced she was a freshman because she had a really stylish haircut and she
And what were you at that time?
I was a junior.
Junior, okay.
And she's very fit, you know. So she hadn't done the freshman 15 thing clearly.
Yeah.
And so I came from a fishing family. So the thing that the assignment for the class was identify 3 fish using this. They call it a dichotomous key, which I'm not going to bore you with.
Thank you.
So I came from a fishing family, and these were all like Native American fish in the tank that we had to identify. So I picked 3 really easy ones, and I was done. I turned and looked at this poor, cute freshman sitting next to me, and she was still working. She had a northern pike sitting in front of her, and she had no idea what to do. So I was like, "Can I help you?" And so she introduces herself, and she has this gorgeous Norwegian accent.
Okay.
And so then I help her identify the fish, and they gradually discover she's actually a senior, and she, and that we had she'd been studying in Norway for a couple of years. So that's how we met, and we knew by the 3rd date.
Okay.
I said my favorite author was C.S. Lewis, and she said hers was, and then we started talking and clicking, and then,
I love it.
been in love ever since.
I love it.
Do we have time for him to tell a real quick story
Yes.
about the first time you went to church with him?
Yes.
Oh yes. Well.
We have time for that
Yeah.
story.
Well, so I quickly, we became very close very fast, and her family had settled in the Minneapolis area. So
Okay.
went home to meet them, and by this point I knew, but they didn't,
Right.
and so like it was kind of like
Did she know?
Yeah, oh yeah, she knew.
Okay. So her family's like, who is this guy that all of a sudden?
Well, yes, exactly.
Okay.
And so we went up there, and they all still spoke Norwegian around the home, of course. I didn't. and or I'd been picking up words here and there. She'd been teaching me, but I would hear my name come up during conversation at dinner and laughing, and then I said, "What were they talking about me?" She's like, "Oh, I don't remember. I'm sure it was nothing." And then so you can see like this is my mindset when we're getting ready to go to church, and I'm like, I don't know how to dress. What's the dress code at the church? So I turned to her mother and said, What should I wear to church? She said, wear a dress. Per, her husband, he always wears a dress to church. I'm like, he wears a dress? Oh, yes, every Sunday. Very important to wear a dress. So I'm like, okay, thank you. And then I went to my then girlfriend said, did Norwegians wear kilts or something? Your mom told me I need to wear a dress, and she just bursts out laughing. She says, "Oh, it's a suit." Yeah, no, but I mean, yeah, but in Norwegian, the word for suit is dress, and so she was just mixing up. She figured I knew more Norwegian than I did.
Okay.
Yeah, so
You had a great story.
Yes.
I'm glad I got that
I'm
clarified.
so glad you
Yes,
asked.
that's right. Yeah.
In a dress.
Oh, I don't know. I might have paid to see Rick in a dress.
Yes, that would be hilarious, especially with your.
He probably still had all his hair back then.
Oh yeah, I had all the hair back at the time.
Had to marry her quick before. No, I'm just kidding.
That's right.
Okay.
That's like the peacock feathers. It's gone. It's done its job. I don't need it anymore.
Okay, Colleen. So last time you told us how you met your husband.
Mm-hmm.
So this time, just tell us something about your husband that really means a lot to you. Just really appreciate it about him.
He is always there for me, and he hauls me all over the country. He goes with me to book events, and he's very. I'm very outgoing. He's very introverted, very quiet normally until you get to know him very well. But he never seems to mind all the things that he has to do for me very quietly in the background, and he's just always the constant. He's just always the constant support. I would probably never have had a career but for Dave.
That's awesome. Okay, so we have just a little bit of time left, and I want you to tell us what you're working on. In fact,
I brought it
I
along.
Want you to show us. Tell us a little bit about I Think I Was Murdered.
Yeah. So there's Katrina is an attorney in a startup AI company in San Francisco, and her husband went off a cliff a year before, and so she's still grieving. And her best friend uploads all of Jason's texts and emails and all that kind of stuff into this AI chatbot. And so Katrina can talk to Jason.
Okay.
She thinks it's helping with her grief, but of course, that's really
Right.
not. And one day she's particularly upset. Her grandmother died. The FBI has moved in on the AI company, and she's kind of a target too because they don't know if she was involved. And she's texting Jason and says, "Tell me something I don't know." And the Jason says, "I think I was murdered." And so then she's on a and so then she's of course on a quest to find out what really happened to Jason. And there's a lot of
That sounds
interest,
amazing.
So
Adding to my list.
yes, and you might talk a bit more there.
Sure. Yeah. So we were actually in the middle of the sequel to What We Hide when we came up with this idea. Immediately went to the publisher with it, and you called it.
Yep.
You said they're going to have us stop working on the sequel so we can get this out as fast as
Because
possible.
AI is very
When
hot.
does it come out?
November.
Okay, perfect. Well,
Yep.
this episode releases in November,
yeah,
so
exactly.
perfect. You can
November
go get
12th. Yep.
it. Okay.
And we also had decided to work in some Norwegian stuff.
Okay.
Annette was a great help. So his wife.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you, Annette.
she always is. She's always been like my first editor and brainstorming partner.
Okay.
And so we decided to do a little Norwegian-themed town on the north coast of California, up in the Lost Coast area, with the fog and the redwoods and the old lumber
That
towns.
sounds amazing. I would love to
It's a
travel there.
Norwegian rock harbor.
Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds great. I'm in. Well, thank you guys so much
Thanks for having
coming
us,
on the
Jenny.
show. And if you are enjoying the show, please give it a thumbs up on YouTube and leave us a comment. And if you're watching or listening on the podcast, please leave a review. In fact, I would like to thank KRSTG for your review. She or he said, "I'm enjoying this podcast so much. Jenny has such insightful questions that bring to light how God writes his stories in our real lives, even as she and the wonderful authors she brings in discuss the power and depth of their fictional stories. Looking forward to more episodes." So thank you so much. So appreciate it. And y'all have a wonderful November and Thanksgiving. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Okay, we are back for a little bonus treat. I just discovered something that Rick has to offer that you have to hear about. So, Rick, tell us.
Sure. As a free giveaway for What We Hide, we decided to do a murder mystery party kit. I had been writing these for decades for family and friends, and so when Colleen heard about it, she said, let's just do one for the book. So you find
He did it. That's beyond my bandwidth.
so it's designed for 6 or more players. There's full bios and rounds of clues, and there's even a recipe from the book.
Okay.
So you'll get to play minor characters. Boo Radley, the alligator, is a playable character.
Awesome. I loved Boo Radley.
I know, I love Boo.
And it's designed to, you don't have to have read the book, but it does help. And it's a free download on our websites. In fact, maybe we can drop a link into the podcast.
Yes, I'll put it in the show notes. And I just got invited to a murder mystery dinner thing. So I have friends that love to do that, and I've always been interested but never done it before.
Okay.
So this sounds really good. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny.